Right. Well, but they went out and bought it, you know? And it's like, so just take $10 and throw it immediately in the trash, you know? So, but Andreas, go.
He said he'd
Hey.
show up, or I guess he said
Well,
he'd
he said he'd do his
try.
best. Yeah. So, which I mean, his best from him, like that's a pretty low bar. We knew
Yeah.
better. So I'm filling it for Andres and EG. So, it's just going to be terrible. But welcome to the writer's room, the Dresden Files, White Knight, part 11D6. I don't even know what we're up to now. Are we
I think
part
it's
six
part
now?
6, unless I
Yeah.
miscounted, which is
It
possible. I've done that before.
it doesn't surprise me. We've been going about 5, and so if we're lucky with just the 2 of us, we might be able to make it through the 10 chapters between here and the end. I think it might be 11 or 12, but,
I mean,
it's
those are
it's
big chapters,
possible.
right? Because
So,
this is like
yes, it's the climax and everything, right? Because
mm.
we just iced the Skavis, we have not even gotten to the duel yet, and
Ramirez
the
hasn't even
2nd
shown up
duel and
yet.
the 3rd duel, correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So welcome to the writer's room, White Knight, part 6, presumably. If you want to support us, join our Discord. We'll plug it again at the end because we need
Occasionally,
money,
you'll get book
you know.
recommendations, and 4 years later, try to find it.
Yes, right. Not only will we recommend you a book, we will spend 3 or more of us will go back through our Discord to
Oh my
find that
god.
recommendation 4 years later to re-recommend it for you.
We're
So if that's
dedicated.
not worth it to you, like I don't know what is, so all right, let's try and get some gusto here. So, chapter 32. So basically, at the end of chapter 31, they finish off the Skavis and everything. Dresden confronts Thomas about, hey, is Laura throwing some kind of shindig? And Thomas is like, well, all of the details, but if she was doing any of that, I couldn't tell you. And
Mhm.
so Dresden leaves. Now it's funny because in chapter 32, especially at the beginning of it, he takes Mouse and the Blue Beetle to the car wash to
Mhm.
literally wash all the evidence off. And I'm just like, I think it'd be funny as shit. Like this reevaluates everything we've done up to this point, but I think it'd be funny as shit to like maybe not do a post credit scene, but to do a mid credit scene of just like you just had this whole thing and we killed everybody, and you get Harry's wolfish grin of we're gonna crash Lara's party. You roll credits, and the trend now is to do something fun with the music. So if it's traumatic, you just leave people in silence with their
Mm.
thoughts. But if it's good, you've got some kind of song for the outro. But to just interrupt it with Dresden just like car washing, and washing Mouse at the car wash and stuff. Like that's all it needs. It needs like 30 seconds of silence interrupted by Dresden, being domestic and
And the
washing
dog
away the
trying to
evidence.
get away, like, the
Yeah,
actor for
shake on him
Mouse.
and just be like, "Oh, come on," and then just cut it, so,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's my morning brain contribution, so,
Right. But they wash off at the car wash, and then they go hang out at the hospital, right? Because, like, Elaine had to
um,
go, and this is when,
yes,
a security guard is trying to like, "You're looking suspicious." And it's like, "Are you gonna Tonfa me to death?"
right?
This is how I
Yes,
learned that
and
word, and it
the
was
what
actually
now?
useful, like, a year ago.
Oh, really? Yeah. My
I
dad
remember
had
the
one,
name.
so when it shows up, I was like, "Oh, well, that's some neat trivia about the whole, like, it used to be a mill pin or whatever," but yeah, my dad had Tonfas, so, but yeah. Yeah, I especially like the whole like Mouse takes notice with extreme prejudice. Like I don't
Mm.
remember if that was entirely a line or if I just that was my notes, but it's like dude starts like squaring off with Dresden. It's like first of all, I could kick your ass up between your ears, and second of all, so could my dog. Like you are completely outmatched here. And then, Murphy comes, walking up with her badge out and everything. And it's like, are you harassing this poor man? you know, it's like, police dog, he's with me, the dog's with him, police dog. So,
Yeah. Transitive property of
uh,
police
of
authority.
authority. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Um, yeah, I think she says the dog's a handicap assist animal, but you know,
His mouth. It's too
yeah,
handicapped. It's too
my mouth
stupid.
is partially paralyzed. It makes it harder for me to read. She's here to help me with the big words. Tell me if I'm supposed to push or pull on doors, that kind of thing. So, yeah. Yeah. So, um, yeah. So, anyway, yes, that of course needs to be in because funny. So, yeah. And then, some banter between Murphy and Dresden, but it's like, Mouse, if I knock Harry out and write insufferable wise ass on his head in permanent marker, will you help him read it? So, yeah.
And this is a good moment because it's Murphy making true on her word of this isn't over and we're going to talk. And now we're
Right.
talking.
Yeah. Yeah, which I do have that section in here. So, she's looking around. Where's Molly? Rollins took her back home for me. I said we needed to talk about her. Yeah. What you did, Harry, she needed it. She needed it. The words were crisp. I shrugged. The kid's got powers. She thinks that means she knows more than other people. That's dangerous. Murphy frowned at me, listening. I'd been planning the little ball of face melty sunshine thing for a while now, I said. I mean, come on, fire is hard to control. I couldn't have done something like that without practicing it, and you can't exactly use a nice, slow, dramatic face melty fireball in a real fight, can you? Maybe not. I had, let's see, I had a kind of face melty thing come at me once and it made an impression, I said. Molly got off to a bad start. She took her magic, she reshaped the stuff around her, the people around her. Murph. You can't do anything with magic that you don't believe in. Think about the significance of that for a minute. When Molly did what she did, she believed she was right, that she was doing the right thing. Think about her parents. Think about how far they're willing to go to do the right thing. I have to keep knocking her on her ass. I said, if I let her recover her balance before she gets smart enough to figure out why she should be doing things instead of just how to do them, or if she can do them, she'll start doing the, using air quotes, right thing again. She'll break the laws again, and they'll kill her and you. That's a ways down on my worry list. So. Let's see. Yeah, so there's some more back and forth, but he has it's just like being a cop knowing martial arts. I think this is her actually. I know that I can do some fairly awful things to people. It's my business to make sure that awful things don't happen to people. I'm careful about how I use what power I have. I'll tell that to my dentist. I had to pull that out because that was a cheap shot, and yeah, the a reference back to Full Moon. I had not caught that before, not that I recall anyway.
I mean, they
So
talked about it in Proven Guilty. It's like, wait, I chipped a tooth? Like, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So,
that one I remember, but that was like recent, right? By White
yeah.
Knight, it's like, dude, that was like most of a decade ago, and he's still salty about it.
I mean, chipped teeth can
But
hurt.
well, I mean, sure, but Dresden has had other chipped teeth by now, and Murphy's very solidly in Camp Dresden by now, right?
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. He's
like they're
had
ride or die.
bullet
Like, don't,
wounds and way
uh,
worse than a chipped tooth. Of all the police violence that he has seen or experienced,
right,
one tooth, yeah, you can get over it. She apologized,
right, right.
I think. Something that I always liked about this conversation between them is like, okay, so he's doing things with Molly. That's one thing. But what about the businesses that he destroyed? It's like they're insured.
Sure,
Okay, sure, the businesses are insured, but what does that mean for the workers at Espresso Express that don't have a job anymore? Like there's other
right.
collateral damage that he wasn't paying attention to, and he thought he was right to destroy that building, as he points out. And I really like that she turns that against him and
Right.
forces him to think of the collateral damage that he causes, that it's
Mhm.
not just the scary thing with Molly. And in general, I'm always intrigued of like, you destroyed a building in Chicago. What are the consequences of that? Eventually, they're just going to stop rebuilding Chicago, and it's just going to be a disaster.
Nah. I mean, I don't expect that would ever happen, but, like, she probably did have to lie for him, for example, and just be like, there was another incendiary device that they were near, right?
Mhm.
Somebody blew up a garbage can trying to get to them or something, silly like that, but plausible, right?
They
You
could
know?
maybe make Marcone do the lying because I'm sure he's got
Sure.
great insurance and he's gonna cover the buildings that are around him and all those
But
things,
if
but
he but if he says, "Oh, well, Detective Murphy and Dresden were nearby as
Mhm.
witnesses," right? Like, yeah, now you've got a problem because it's like those stories may or may not match, so
Yeah.
he's not gonna make trouble for them, but he could,
Oh, yeah,
so
and that puts them in his debt and
yeah.
other weird shit.
Which Dresden's gonna be deep enough in his debt this book anyway, like,
Yeah,
all the
maybe you
way
just,
in,
like,
so
throw this on the tab and we'll call it good.
right, right. Yeah, like, this is incidental. This is like 50 cents on your check, like, come on,
Just the
so,
cherry on top.
yeah. Yeah, I think, um yeah, let's see. Yeah, so, sorry, I was just trying to find out if this part of my notes, was the part you were talking about with the damage and whatever, but it's actually about the Elaine and, she's gonna be down for a couple of days, and Dresden's kinda relieved about that, and "Didn't she steal your thunder?" "Well, I got plenty of thunder." Uh, and, um and he's like, "Got to admit, I've never seen her throw that big of a punch before, though. Pretty impressive," Murphy admitted. "Yeah, but she had it under control. No one else got hurt. Building didn't even burn down." Murph gave me a sideways look. Like I said. So, um, but yeah, so then Dresden calls Marcone and negotiates for the ending, right?
Mhm.
So,
Say
um,
please.
yeah. I stewed for a sullen moment before I realized that doing so was probably building Marcone's morale, and I couldn't have that. Fine, I said. Please. Pretty please? Marcone prompted me. Some pyromaniacal madman's thoughts flooded my forebrain, but I took a deep breath, tasered my pride, and said, pretty please, with a cherry on top. Fuck you. I said, and I hung up on him. I kicked the base of the vending machine and muttered a curse. Marcone was probably laughing his quiet, mirthless little laugh. Jerk. I
Tell me
rejoined
they're not
Murphy. So,
friends.
yes, right. Like, yeah. Oh man. I was trying to remember that reminded me of something else where it's like they're probably going to be best friends after this, but yeah,
Mm.
because they were brawling. But anyway, um, boys, So
Yeah.
I mean, Marcone gave him a castle, right? So like that's a pretty good
After
friends
saving
thing.
his ass too.
Yeah. So yep, there's a lot there. So um all right. So Harry tells Murphy all about the doomsday scenario. I think he's basically breaking down why it's such a big deal that what the White Court was doing and why he's got to, shut it down hard and everything like that. Um, but so he's going through like, so, this is what it's going to look like over the next couple of decades because vampire time frames and stuff. And Murphy says something like, oh my God, or whatever. And then it's just like, oh, come on, Karen. I said, and I winked at her, pushed myself warily to my feet. That's not going to happen while I'm still alive. So
Mm,
I have a plan. What's the plan, Harry? I told her. She looked at me for a second, then said, you're crazy.
yeah, and this
So,
is how you know the plan's gonna work, or we get to see it happen because he doesn't explain
right.
it. If he does explain it, then you
It,
know it's gonna go wrong.
it's the tropes. So heist tropes is where it becomes most prevalent, but anytime, right? Anytime
Mhm.
they explain the plan and are executing the plan, it's going to go sideways, right? But anytime the plan is left, unsaid, then it'll be fine.
Yeah,
That's what the
and
tropes are.
it's
So,
part of the trope, but, like, you don't wanna bore people by telling them the same thing twice. Like,
sure.
if they
Sure.
already know it, they already know it. You don't need to show that again. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Let's see. So Dresden goes back to his place to get ready, I think, and Lash confronts him. Let's see. Yeah, so he confronts Lash back about, his anger issues lately. And she's
Mhm.
like, well, I told you once before that you are easier to talk to while you're asleep. The fallen angel turned to depart at that note, probably because it would have made a nicely scary exit line. I extended my hand and with it my mind and barred her departure with an effort of simple will. Lashiel existed only in my thoughts after all. My head, my rules. We aren't finished. She turned to face me, and her eyes suddenly glowed with orange and amber scarlet flickers of hellfire. It was the only non black thing about her, which is got to be a really fucking cool,
Mhm.
visual. So, um, but yeah, I think they go back and forth, and she talks about the ways that he can, use her power for the good of people and all this stuff. And there's some comment or thought about, Saint Dresden or whatever. It's like,
Mhm.
hardly, but
Do not
um,
tempt me, Frodo.
yeah, right. For an inhumanly brilliant spiritual enemy, you can really miss the freaking point. I poked a finger at my own temple. Think, maybe you don't have to be Lashiel. So
Mhm.
just some, foreshadowing and some poking there. But let's see. So yeah, he's waiting in the apartment for Ramirez to show up. And so like I mean, we have an opportunity here to make a new waiting meme, So I'm just saying like he he's running out the clock, uh prepping all his gear, making sure his gun is clean, his duster is all polished and everything ridiculous like that. And then Ramirez shows up and everything. So and then Ramirez being inappropriate about Molly behind her back, like, talking about her, physically and everything. So dude's got it bad. He's saying hi to the kids, Mouse and Mister and everything. Um, and then Dresden catches him up on the plan and everything like that. Let's see. I guess I didn't include the part like I do think it's funny, but I didn't make my notes for the whole like, I don't approve of recreational drug use when he throws catnip to Mister.
Mm.
So, you know, um and Ramirez is just like, "Okay, dad." So, um, yeah.
It's funny
So
because he's gonna do that in small favor, which is good and fine and fun, but
what? The
so
drug
he had
use?
yeah, because he had catnip on a string that he was having Mr. chase around, but every time Mr.
Oh,
landed on Little Chicago, he was sending the elves crazy places, and
right,
so it was a good distraction, and it was clever using
right.
Little Chicago that he could. It's just like recreational drug use is useful then.
Yeah. It's just gotta be funny, man. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be consistent. So, but yeah. Yeah, so Ramirez and Dresden are drinking beer and everything, and so he lowers his bottle. "Can we do this?" I snorted. "Can't be any harder than Halloween." "We had a dinosaur then," Ramirez said, and then turned and pulled fatigue pants and a black Offspring t-shirt out of his bag. He gave me an up and down look. "Of course we still do." So so yeah. Molly arrives and she wants to help. So now Dresden
Mhm.
gets to be Dick 2.0. And so he all screams at her and everything, demanding how many beads that you know, she can move and everything like that. Let's see. And then she basically she has a pretty good line. I didn't pull the full or like moment. I didn't pull the full thing into my notes, but the whole like, why does it matter? It doesn't matter how many beads, and everything. It matters that I need to help and I can help and I want to help. And so whatever needs to happen, I need to be involved with it. It doesn't matter how strong my magic is. And then her bracelet explodes, you know, and
Mhm.
launches beads everywhere. So,
Remember the
and we
detail
like
that when she shows up this time, she has taken all of her piercings out, and she's, like,
right,
dressed in very sensible, pseudo combat ready clothes, like, maybe she has that
right.
jacket that we see Daniel in later, and, like,
She
hair
also
bound
has
back.
like military boots, we know, and everything
Yeah,
like that. So,
yeah, so
yeah,
she's ready to be serious about it, she's not doing it just for fun.
right, right. She finally understands, like really
Mhm.
understands,
All she
is the
needed was
point.
to feel the
So,
Skavis to die.
apparently,
Yeah.
but it'd be like, oh, right. I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? There's like understanding, that it's like, oh man, I could die doing this or whatever, and then actually dying, or seeing death or whatever, right? Like it's a part of the human condition that it's like you don't understand the stakes until they happen. If you're lucky, they happen to somebody close to you and you don't personally pay that cost. But a lot of people just don't get it until they're in it. It's exceptionally hard for people to learn through lectures and example for certain
Mhm.
things, right? It's just there's nothing that you can draw on related experience, right? It'd be one thing if it's like, oh, well, we're going to do this kind of exercise and it's slightly different than this other exercise you've done. There's no like half measures really for like death. Like maybe if you saw somebody in a coma, maybe if you saw somebody in the ER for a week or something like that, that's close. But like, that has a way of kind of waking you up for this sort of thing, I gotta imagine,
Yeah.
but yeah. Oh, okay. I guess I skipped ahead a little bit with the whole bracelet thing. So it's like, she nodded. All I can promise you is that I won't leave you when you need me. I'll do whatever you think I can. I'll stay here and man the phone. I'll drive the car. I'll walk at the back and hold the flashlight, whatever you want. She met my eyes and her own hardened. But I can't sit at home being safe. I need to be a part of this. I need to help. There was a sudden sharp sound as the leather strand of her bracelet snapped of its own volition. Black beads flew upward with so much force that they rattled off the ceiling and went bouncing around the apartment for a good 10 seconds. Mr. Still batting playfully at his gift sack of catnip, paused to watch them, ears flicking, eyes alertly tracking their movement.
And all those beads go
Uh,
straight under the fridge.
yeah, right. Dresden's super worried about that, obviously. Like, I mean, first of all, he could probably just magic them out of there if he really needed to, but
It's true. Maybe the
and
brownies
it's not
would.
a fridge; it's an ice box.
Eh,
So
same
yeah,
thing. Cat toys
eh,
under the fridge, under the
depending
couch where it's hard to reach.
depending because like the ice boxes that I'm familiar with, anyways, they're more like waist high. There was plenty of space under them.
Mm,
So, but I
okay.
mean, it is possible it's more like a 1950s style ice box where it does look more like a modern fridge, and you just have the block of ice on top, or something like that. But yeah. So Dresden explains the beads were never going to go up. Like I said, power had nothing to do with it. You didn't need that. You needed brains. I thumped a forefinger over one of her eyebrows. You needed to open your eyes. You needed to be fully aware of how dangerous things are. You needed to understand your limitations, and you needed to know why you should set out on something like this. But all I said was I was scared. After what you got to experience, that's smart, kid. I'm scared too. Every time something like this happens, it scares me, but being strong doesn't get you through it. Being smart does. I've beaten people and things who were stronger than I was because they didn't use their heads or because I used what I had better than they did. It isn't about muscle, kiddo, magical or otherwise. It's about your attitude, about your mind. Wizards.
Hmm.
She nodded slowly and said, about doing things for the right reasons. You don't throw down like this just because you're strong enough to do it, I said. You do it because you don't have much choice. You do it because it's unacceptable to walk away and still live with yourself later. She stared at me for a second and then her eyes widened. Otherwise, you're using power for the sake of using power. I nodded, and power tends to corrupt. It isn't hard to love using it, Molly. You've got to go in with the right attitude or the power starts using you. She said she'd heard the argument before, but this was the first time she said the words slowly, thoughtfully, as if she actually understood them instead of just parroting them back to me. Then she looked up. That's why you do it, why you help people. You're using the power for someone other than yourself. I grinned at her and hugged her. She hugged back. Did you get a lesson like this? Pretty much from this grumpy old Scot on a farm in the Ozarks. When do I stop feeling like an idiot? I'll let you know when I do.
Yeah, that never goes
So,
away.
yeah. Yep. So let's see. So he goes over stuff with her, what he wants her to do, covers contingencies on when she can help and when she needs to rabbit Mouse, and she gives Mouse and the hypersonic whistle so that like if I if I blow this, he'll know where I am and he'll come find me. Just hold on to his leash and he'll handle the rest. So I think from there they go straight to the wraiths. I got to switch my notes here, but she basically like parks the car across from the estate and then makes it disappear, and like including like the exhaust and the dust that they're kicking up and like all of this other stuff. So yeah, Ramirez gave the approximate space where my apprentice sat a big grin and a gallant, vaguely Spanish little bow. Molly let out a suppressed giggle. The car engine cut out, and she said, "Go on. I've got to keep compensating for the dust you're kicking up, and it's a pain. Eyes open. Use your head. You too. Don't tell him to start doing new things now," Ramirez chided her. "You'll just confuse him." So, but yeah. Yeah. So Ramirez, inappropriate again. Pretty body like that and talent too. She seeing anyone? Not since she drilled holes in her last boyfriend's psyche and drove him insane. Right.
Which Ramirez knew of. He was
Yeah,
there when she
he
was almost
just
decapitated.
he was thinking with the little brain. So
Given what Lara says next, it's okay. I don't know.
I don't think there's a thing I'm going to say here that's not going to get me in trouble. I'm just, I'm not supposed to approve of this. So, so they go up to the front gate and Ramirez hexes the gate and the cameras. There's some banter about that and be like, wait, you got the gate. Yeah. And the cameras for like, 100 feet in every direction or some nonsense like that. So, so then a limo drives down the driveway to meet them and everything. And I think they have to like manually push open the gate because it's toast now, right? So the driver door opened and a man got out and recognized him as one of Lara's personal bodyguards. He was a bit taller than average, leanly muscled, and had a military haircut and sharp, wary eyes. He wore a sports jacket, khakis. Man, pronunciation's hard right now, and wasn't working to hide the shoulder rig he wore under the coat. He took a look at us, then passed us at the gate and the fence. Then he took a small radio from his pocket and started speaking into it. "Dresden," he asked. "Yeah." "Ramirez, the one and only. You're armed." "Heavily." He grimaced and nodded. "Get in the car, please." So now there's a problem there too, because they don't like to be told what to do either. And, he basically challenges her and be like, if Lara wants us to get in the car, she can come walk her pretty ass down here and ask me personally. So, which she's already in the car. So
yeah, because she's smarter than him or like 3 steps ahead at least.
Ish, that they're racing right now. In this way, she's ahead of him, but he's still got some some gas in the tank for her later, which isn't a double entendre, but it works. So yeah. So the mistress of the White Court stepped forth from the Rolls Royce. Lara is difficult to describe. I'd met her several times, and each meeting had carried a similar impact, a moment of stunned admiration and desire at her raw physical appeal that did not lessen with exposure. There was not one feature about her that I could have pointed out as particularly gorgeous. There was no one facet of her beauty that could be declared as utter perfection. Her appeal was something far greater than the sum of her parts, and none of those were less than heavenly. Like Thomas, she had dark, idly curling hair, so glossy that the highlights were very nearly a shade of blue. Her skin was one creamy, gently curving expanse of milk white perfection, and if there were moles or birthmarks anywhere on her body, I couldn't see them. Her dark pink lips were a little large for her narrow-chinned face, but they didn't detract. They only gave her a look of lush overindulgence, of deliberately and wicked sensuality. And I mean, I'm just saying, if you want this to be a lasting marriage, you let her read this part of your journal and like, come on, man, so it's easy. So
yeah, but she knows she has this response.
Well, I mean, obviously, but she probably expects that to be like half supernatural. And with Dresden, she knows the supernatural affects him, but not as much as other people.
Yeah, she does
So,
turn him, or he does turn her down.
right.
It's kind of
Which,
confusing.
yeah, probably she can count on one hand and not
Maybe
use all her
Thomas in Cold
fingers,
Day says
you
that
know.
that was 2 men in a century. She's confused, or she was a little hurt.
Right. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. It was her eyes, though, that were the real killers. They were large, oblique orbs of arsenic gray, highlighted with flecks of periwinkle blue. I mean, like, come on, dude. More important, they were very alive eyes, alert, aware of others, shining with intelligence and humor. So much so, in fact, that if you weren't careful, you'd miss the smoldering demonic fires of sensuality in them, of a steady predatory hunger. So, yeah. So then she is kind of like walking around them, trying to put them on the back foot and everything like that. She goes after Dresden. Dresden kind of barely contains himself, but this is the part where I got nervous. Ramirez loved women. Ramirez never shut up about women. Well, he never shut up about anything in general, but he'd go on and on about various conquests and feats of sexual athleticism, and a virgin, Laura blurted. She turned her head to me, gray eyes several shades paler than they had been and very wide. Really, Harry, I'm not sure what to say. Is he a present? You know. I knew
That
the.
line from What We Do in the Shadows of like, it just, if you were gonna eat a sandwich, you'd just really be happier knowing no one had fucked it.
I mean, sure, but maybe that's true for vampires. I'm just saying it doesn't necessarily have to relate for anything else there. So,
She's a vampire.
yeah.
It's the
Well,
unfucked sandwich
true.
on a platter. That's it.
I mean, I gotta imagine that it works out for the White Court because they like I don't know. There's again, like I'm gonna go one way and then I think I can counter myself already, so I'm just gonna eject. But anyway, the book will save me. I knew the look on Ramirez's face. It was the look of a young man who wants nothing so badly as to discard complex things in life like civilization, social mores, clothing, and speech, and see what happened next. Laura knew it too. Her eyes glittered brightly, and her smile was serpentine, and she pressed closer. But Ramirez apparently knew about glittery gold too, and I know he didn't I didn't know he'd hidden a knife up his sleeve, but it appeared in his hand in an instant before its tip pressed into the bottom of Lara's throat. I am not food, he said, and met her eyes. So, and Dresden's never seen a soul gaze from outside, or at least not very often.
Mm.
So, so we get that description, everything like that. But,
Well, that better
but
come
yeah,
back to haunt him.
the soul
Ramirez,
gaze.
yes, because Ramirez is gazing with Laura, and he says in a
Mhm.
minute, like that helps him not be affected by her because it was off-putting. But
Mhm.
now he knows that Dresden is going to marry Laura, and he had the privilege of soul gazing her, so it's like his judgment of that marriage is going to be even worse.
Perhaps. Yeah. I mean, yeah, like I imagine many bad things because it's like he already thinks that he's compromised by the White Court.
Mhm.
Now he's getting married to like the head of the house, as far as everybody knows, right? I mean, everybody doesn't know, but at least the head of the house's right hand, if nothing else. And he's not protected by the council anymore. Like,
Mhm.
Dresden is going to be pleasantly in a parallel universe fighting a much stronger dark wizard version of himself. But I imagine when he comes back, he's going to have to contend with wardens chasing him again, which is old news, really. But like, they never really, I don't think they really chased him like this, right? Like, they were chasing a punk kid, you know, warlock at the time, as far as they were concerned. Now, it's going to be like for keeps, and that'll be kind of interesting.
Yeah,
So,
how how much of a loss are they willing to accept to go after Dresden?
right.
And that calculus is really gonna
And
bother
like
them.
on what grounds, right? It's like, sure, you don't have to like what's going on, but is he broken any of the laws? And is he like, it's not great that you've let such an otherwise powerful asset run loose with the presumed enemy, but like, I don't know. Other than that, I don't know what they would go
I
after him
mean,
for.
didn't
But
Ramirez
you know,
say when he was announcing that he was kicked out of the council, like basically trying to disallow him from using magic at all? Like they
right?
said things of like,
Sure.
"Now you don't get to have these privileges that wizards have anymore." And it's like even Michael was saying, "What the fuck are they going to do to you?"
Right. That'll be fun. Like
Yeah,
have Michael stand up for him.
yeah,
So yeah.
that must make people question.
I mean, you'd think so, but like maybe the Merlin would pause for a second or something and have a brief conversation, right? Like he did before, like, like he does in Proven Guilty, right? Which sword and all that. He knows, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, so anyway, yeah. This is all good. Let's get on with it. So,
Yeah, tiny tangent.
um yeah. All right, so they join Lara in the car. Uh, she went back to get his guard, who looked like he was fighting off a fit of apoplexy. I turned and eyed Ramirez. He turned bright red. Virgin? I asked him. He turned more red. Carlos? She's lying. She's evil. She's really evil and lying. So yeah, it's just so good. Like, all right, so they're driving out to the deeps past the castle house. Bunch of fairy powered lanterns, literally, because there's fairies inside. Um,
That must have been
and then
so annoying to set up and catch and like meticulous, tedious.
or some kind of spell, like they're small. Can you do like just a summoning gravitas, like gravity
How,
type of thing and just pull them all in,
maybe, but it's the same thing
or
of like what he did in Stormfront of like, and here's some milk and honey and bread and just whoever wants it, and then all of a sudden they show up. But you just have to do that for however many fairies. It's a lot.
right. Yeah. Well, and I was thinking too, like, are the lanterns simply iron, or do they have, like, are they little cages, like magical cages each?
I would assume it has to be that
So
one.
yeah. I
Why not
mean,
both?
you could put like a little ceramic plate in the bottom of it or something, and then just make the cage out of iron. But it's like, how do you get them in and all this other stuff? But I'm thinking if you've got like if you hire the Svartalfs to make like 900 of these damn things, right, and each one of them has a little rune that you trigger to like just slurps up a fairy, then maybe that's not so hard as it is expensive. But I don't know, it's not explained even a little bit, so
No,
but yeah.
throw description. Just
Yeah,
and it's there.
speaking of throwaway descriptions, they come across one of Madeline's victims,
Mm,
so where the person's been eaten to near insanity and whatever, and it's like, oh heavens to Betsy, somebody clean this up, so
yeah, there's
It's not her
Lara
job
being
to clean it up, so might as well go to town.
yeah,
right, yeah, that
Lara
gets
being
explained
annoyed
too.
by Madeline Madrigal. It's good that everybody can be on the same side of those two are shitheads.
Right, yeah. And then Justine shows up and catches Dresden and Ramirez up on court politics. That's probably when, she explains like, oh, well, people like to come here and overindulge because the hosting house has to handle the cleanup and everything. And the Wraiths conveniently have the deeps, right? So they just give a quick little kick and boom, no more bodies. So Dresden's able to listen to court politics and everything because he's got a little demon in his head.
Mhm.
And so, he's following along, and Ramirez is just like extra nervous because he has no idea what's going on, and vampires are laughing in the dark and everything.
Still, like
Um,
this. Yeah, I think Ramirez specifically points this out later. How last time he saw Harry having to speak another language, he had to fight his way through
yeah,
Latin, and now here he is speaking ancient Sumerian.
right.
It's
Yeah,
Etruscan, but yeah.
It's Oscar.
yeah.
Yeah, Etruscan for the
This
White Court
one's
vampires, but ancient Sumerian probably for Ghoul, which we
right.
did see also in this book. Yeah, and this is, of course, when we see Justine kind of switching between modes of acting all zonked out and drugged, perhaps, and then she's completely sober and sharp and talking to them, and like she can translate a little bit for Ramirez as much as he can, and things like that.
Right.
And she's not even Justine.
Well, she might be. I saw something that Jim said that she wasn't even infected by the point of cold days, so she might be actually Justine right now.
Okay, so her recovery originally
Could be,
it's legit.
depending on how what he's decided currently of her state. It might have changed over time.
Yep. Cold, mocking laughter fell on a sudden dead silence. I think I'm going to skip a lot of the banter here. Probably it's awesome and whatever, but you have the lords and ladies, jousting with each other, everything like that. But just for the sake of time, I think I'm going to skip some of that. But okay, never mind. I got to do this one. So yeah, cold and mocking laughter fell on a sudden dead silence. Stupidity, in what way, O weak and aged king? In what way are the deaths of the kind anything but a sweetness to the senses and a balm to the hunger? The quality of her voice changed as if she changed her facing in the cavern. I could imagine her turning to address the audience, scorn ringing in her tone. We are strong, and the strong do as they wish. Who shall call us to task for it, O king? You? If that wasn't a straight line, my name isn't Harry Blackstone Copperfield Dresden.
I know it's an author writing it, but still, just like when I read and I'm just in it and it's real, quote unquote, I just love that part. Like, it's just set it up for him.
Right. I lifted my staff and slammed it down on the floor, forcing an effort of will through it to focus energy of the blow into a far smaller area than the end of the staff. It struck the stone floor, shattering a chunk the size of a big dinner plate with a detonation almost indistinguishable from thunder. Another effort of will sent a rolling wave of silent fire no more than 5 or 6 inches high down the tunnel floor in a red carpet of my very own. I strode down it, Ramirez beside me, the fire rolling back away from our feet as we went, boots striking the stone together. We entered the cavern, and found it packed with pale and startled beings, the entire place awash of beautiful faces and gorgeous wardrobes, except for 20 feet around the entrance where everyone had hurried away from the blazing herald of our presence. I ignored everything, scanning the room until I found Greycloak, aka Vittorio Malvora, standing next to Magical Wraith, not 30 feet away. The murdering bastards were staring at us, mouths open in shock. Vittorio Malvora, I called, my voice ringing with wrath and echoing in the echoing cavern. Magical Wraith, I am Harry Dresden, warden of the White Council of Wizards. Under the Unseelie Accords, I accuse you of murder in a time of peace, and challenge you here and now before these witnesses to trial by combat. I slammed down my staff again in another shock of thunder, and hellfire flooded the runes of the staff. To the death. Utter silence fell on the deeps. Damn, there ain't nothing like a good entrance. There was an immediate uproar from the vampires, a sudden chorus of shouts, protest, and anger. If I'd been in a less defiant mood, it probably would have scared the crap out of me. As it was, I simply shifted my stance, turning slightly to my left while Ramirez did the same in the opposite direction, so that we stood back to back. There wasn't much else to do but prepare to fight in the event that someone decided to kick off a good old-fashioned wizard smashin' for the evening's group activity. So here we get a intro for the cave description and everything, and yay, the deeps, and they've got to have some really good lights somewhere because, we've been doing it. I think they even cover that later because it's like the lights made it through the duel until Cal, right? So
maybe they're
Cal
fairies.
Purposely hexes them. Maybe.
Oh, if Cal hexes them, then never mind. But
yeah,
I don't know if he hexes them. Maybe he does. Yeah, I don't remember, or if it's just he does a big ass working.
Sure. Yeah, because it's like they survive through the duel and both gates, and then they go out. So
yeah, when he does like Master help me, and he puts the psychic whammy on everybody, or something,
like that. So we'll get there. So Lord Wraith is talking to Lady Malvora, I think, right? So he addresses the assembly. We find that we have little choice but to acknowledge the validity of the freak's right of challenge. Under our agreement in the Accords, then we must abide by its terms and permit the trial to proceed. Wraith rolled a droll hand at Vito and Madrigal, unless, of course, our war heroes here lack the courage to withstand this utterly predictable response to their course of action. They are, of course, free to decline the challenge should they feel themselves unable to face the consequences of their deeds. Which I just love the whole, like, what the fuck did you think preying on
Right.
wizards was going to get you? You know, so yeah. Let's see. Yeah, so Dresden and Lara are talking, and I don't have the context of the switch here, but it's like you're testing their reaction. I said, giving a minor but deliberate insult to see what happens. Her lips turned up very, very slowly. Are you sure you're quite determined to remain attached to that sad little clubhouse of old men? Why? Do you take care of your own? I asked. In a great many senses, wizard, she promised. The way you took care of Thomas? I asked. Her smile turned a little brittle. Pride goeth, Lara. So, but you know, more foreshadowing. Like he's going to actually have resources to call on from her. He's not gonna, because that would be too much. Like, you know, not having to suffer through everything that Jim puts him through. But
the
he
purpose
has
of the alliance is going to
protect-
have to be explored. Of like, he's going to help her people, she's going to help his people. That's like the
Right.
point of it.
right.
She could have said
All of the
something
money,
right
all
here.
of the contacts, potentially, just like everything. You know,
Yeah,
healthcare. Like
part of her purposes in this is likely to get rid of Madeline Madrigal. I mean, with a couple of different steps. Madrigal first, because he was being a problem. All the rest of the White
Right.
Court is being a problem, and clearly she's stamping it out. But they were the
Mhm.
reason that she had to cast out Thomas. And she's using Thomas, and she's kind of bringing him back in to do these things and do these purposes. And so he is correct to point out that she wasn't able to protect her brother that she cares about, but she is also rectifying that.
I mean, I think yes and no, right? Like she's using Thomas like a pawn, just like everything else, right? And
Mhm.
you know, it's pretty easy to see why he'd be on the outs and everything. And then by the end of the book, he's the hero of the house. The prodigal son has returned and everything. And so she used him, but she more or less pays him for that, you know, by fixing it later,
Mhm.
you know, and everything. So yeah, which is how the White Court likes to operate, right? So and Dresden's like, yeah, we're being a cat's paw, but I'm gonna get some back too, right? You know, so that happens towards the end of the book and everything as well. But all right, so they're preparing for the duel. Wraith snapped a finger, and thralls in their white kimonos began filling into the room. They swayed more than walked, filing down the sidelines of the dueling ground, and then simply knelt down, a pair of double ranks in front of the vampires on either side of the chamber. They formed, taken together, a wall like that around the hockey arena, but one made of living human flesh. Crap. Any form of mayhem that spread to the sidelines was going to run smack into human victims and my own powers in a fight. Were not exactly surgical instruments. Torrents of flame, blasts of force, and impenetrable bastions of will were sort of my thing. You will note, however, how seldom words like torrent, blast, and bastion get used in conjunction with terms like that denote delicacy and precision. Ramirez is going to be better off than I was in that regard. His combat skills ran more to speed and accuracy versus my own preference for massive destruction, but they were no less deadly in their own way. Carlos looked back and forth and said to me, they're going to try and stay on our flanks, use those people in the background to keep us from cutting loose. I know I never went to Wharton Combat School, I told him, but I feel like I should remind you that this is not my first time. You just aren't going to let that go, are you? So there's a lot of good banter that it's like you're about to die, but we still can't stop cutting each other a little bit, you know? So yeah. So but yeah, there's another like okay dad moment here where it's like you got to watch out for this, and it's like, you know, like I know I'm not as experienced as you are, but it's gonna be okay, you know. So Lord Wraith has a red silk handkerchief stuffed up his sleeve that he uses to signal the duel, right? So style, but you know, he drops it, and then like I mean, stylistic notes, like there's room in here for bullet time stuff, right? We got vampire speed versus wizards who are just smart, right? So it's like,
Mhm.
we could try to do it at full speed, which is like literally Dresden cannot bring his staff up fast enough to do anything compared to Vito, for example. But he does have his shield more or less ready to go and everything like that. So, if we want to at least start with like watching the handkerchief fall in slow motion for a couple seconds or something like that, and then all hell breaks loose, right? But
Could you do it? Could you do it like so you get the impact of it, like that thing that didn't completely catch on with Sherlock Holmes, where it was like he imagined it and then like in slow motion, and then you saw it in real time, really, like where it was fast, and like you remember in Sherlock
Yeah.
with Robert Downey.
I don't remember, but I like the idea of it, right? And we can play around with that. And I mean, like hell, film them both ways, and then, or at least with two kinds of cameras, and then decide which way you prefer it,
Yeah.
or play both.
The reason why I like to present both in terms of like on TV, like they did in the kind of like in Sherlock, but I think it worked well there. But I think for a different reason, it would work well here, where we get we get to actually see what they do, how they move, how complex it might be in a very short amount of time, how Harry has prepared like the shields ready to go and all that speed of thought. But then when it plays out in real time, like how fast and powerful the vampires actually are, and how badass Harry is that he can counter that. Like
Sure.
you get the impact of what was real, what actually happened, but we also see how it played out. I like
Right.
that idea at least.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because it's like because of the skill and speed differences here, they're playing this two different ways, right? For the vampires, it is kind of a duel, and Dresden's like dueling too, but for him it's more chess, where he's got to have his counters ready in advance, and he's got to try and predict what his enemies are going to do, and he has mixed results for that, right? So but he does a good job to start. So Vito Malvora's gun cleared the holster before my fingers had tightened on the blasting rod's handle. The weapon resembled a fairly standard model 1911, but it had an extension to the usual ammunition clip sticking out of the handle, and it spat a spray of bullets in the voice of a yowling buzzsaw. Ramirez already had his power, so I think I'm skipping through this because like there's just so much. I'm not going to read the whole chapter and everything, but Ramirez already had his power held ready when the scarlet cloth hit the ground, and in that instance, he hissed a single syllable under his breath and flipped his left hand palm up. That bizarre glove that he wore flashed and let out a rattling buzz of furious sound. A sudden gelatinous cloud of green light interposed itself between us and the vampires before even Vito could fire. The bullet struck against that gooey cloud, sending watery ripple patterns racing across it, plowing a widening furrow through the semi-solid mass. There was a hissing sound, a sharp pain high up on my left cheek, and then I was slapped across the chest by a spray of tiny, dark particles the size and grains of sand. So Vito empties the magazine, and then he's got some knives as well, so he flings one at Dresden basically. The knife flickered as it came, and if I hadn't hunched up my shoulders and tucked my face behind it, the knife might have found the flesh of my neck and killed me. Instead, its tip struck under the duster's mantle at an oblique angle, and the weapon skittered off the spell armored coat and tumbled off on a wobbly arc. Vito landed in a tumble. I think he jumped like over his shield, right? Is what happens here. So teeth clenched over a scream of pain. His left leg was on fire from the knee down, but he was smart. He didn't stop, drop, and roll. In fact, he didn't stop at all. And it was the only thing that kept my second blast from immolating him. The lance of flame missed him by a foot and momentarily smashed the curtain of falling water behind the white throne into steam. Beside me, I heard Ramirez fling out one of those green blasts. So yeah, one thing that is alternating through here that I didn't pick up through my notes is like there's a lot of commentary from Dresden about the weapons being used and techniques and stuff like that. And he's kind of like, throwing knives aren't particularly deadly, but in vampire hands they are, because they're wildly more accurate and, you know, are aiming for like the throat and stuff like that. You know, it's like typically they're probably just a bad distraction, which you can't really use in a duel either. But for vampires, they're like actually a weapon, you know, so that's why they're kind of using them. But so Magical ends up charging. He's got a spear. He's got like his little like I don't remember the description, but he's got his little like sheets of papyrus or whatever that are like deflecting their or absorbing their magic and everything like that, right? So
Okay.
so he's warded from their magic and everything. Vito reloads and shoots at Harry, who uses his shield to bounce the bullets into Madrigal, which is fucking brilliant as well. And then Ramirez goes to finish off Madrigal. Harry mirrors the outside of his shield to wall off Vito. He basically changes the opacity and makes it reflective. And I'm just like, oh my God, like fucking watch that during the duel, and just seeing like Vito panic and like throw his gun at the shield because suddenly he sees a person there, but it's his own reflection, you know. And so Vito instead jumps 10 plus feet over Harry's shield, which he is also like extended into a wall, like as high as he can. And then throws two knives, taking out the blasting rod and Ramirez's calf. Because Dresden's like, okay, well, I was able to like, you know, deflect the one, and then the other one missed me and completely. What was he even aiming at? And then he hears like Ramirez scream, and he's like, "Fuck!" So that's probably
Well,
bad,
Ramirez didn't even recognize that he had a knife in
yeah.
his leg yet, but
Yeah.
like
Right?
something.
I thought you stepped on me. Yeah. So
Right.
yeah,
it's
we don't.
like mud the deals or something, right? Yeah, you really.
Yeah. Right.
What does that mean? Actually, I don't know Spanish.
Mother of God.
Yeah, Mother of God, probably. Yeah, depending on what he said, but yeah, Dios is God, and
Madre de
Madre.
Dios is mother of God.
Yeah. So very common, you know, expletive in Spanish. So, you know, kind of like, you know, Michael instead says in nomine Dei for everything, which is in the name of God, you know. So, but all right. So
Doesn't use
more
an expletive. He just does like as a
uh,
war cry, but
for a paladin, it's the same thing. So he more like uses blood of God for his expletive, right? So, you know, but yeah. So I couldn't take my eyes off Vito for a second. I had to hope that Ramirez was holding his own against Magical. I had to buy time and distance. I slammed Will and Hellfire through my staff, snarled Fozare, and released it in a broad wave that lashed out into absolutely everything in front of me. The wave of force caught Vito and flung him from his feet. He hit a brawny thrall with a neatly clipped goatee, and then the wave caught up and struck the man too, as well as the folk on either side of him. They were flung back into the second row of kneeling thralls, and they, in turn, were all bowled back into the crowd of vampires behind them, to a general scream of surprise and dismay. Hadn't been a lot of force by the time it got to the thralls, not all spread out like that. I could have delivered tackles that had hit harder. It had been enough, though, to tangle Vito, whose leg was still on fire, by the way, in a pile of courtiers and thralls. "Welcome, ladies and gentlemen," I hollered, "to Bowling for Vampires." To my intense discomfort, a round of laughs went up from the Wraith contingent, and I got a smattering of applause. I raised my shield again into a shimmering half dome of glittering silver and blue light this time, and twisted my head around to look for Ramirez. So he sees Ramirez rushing to finish, or sorry, he sees Magical rushing to finish off Ramirez. Ramirez throws a green bolt and misses him, but because he was aiming at the ground, and evaporates a section of the ground the size of a bathtub. Ramirez cuts, let's see. So Magical basically like pratfalls into what is effectively dust now, and probably screams on his way down because it's hilarious. And then, you know, catches himself, you know, midsection, like kind of realizes what's going on. And then he plants his spear to like lift himself out, which means that he's completely defenseless right now, right? So Ramirez pulls his sword, his warden's sword, and Snicker snacks both armbands off so that he's no longer warded, and cuts through the spear all kind of in one motion. And then Harry basically, I think, uses Fozare to just like knock him up into the cavern and just bone-shattering force and everything like that. So Vito finally gets himself untangled from the thralls and the other vampires, comes to finish the fight. All the vampires are watching in morbid fascination. I think there's internal monologue of like, oh, they're like semi-immortal beings. They don't get to see a death of their own kind very much. So they're all like pressing in, like, watching, presumably his final moments and everything like that. So Vito Malvora, the last of Anna's killers, faced me steadily, his eyes gone white. I thought that for a man about to face two fairly deadly wizards determined to kill him, he did not look terribly frightened. In fact, he looked pleased. Oh, crap. Vito threw back his head, spread his arms. I dropped the shield and shouted, "Kill him!" Vito lifted his voice in a sudden thunderous roar, and I could sense the will and the power that underlay his call. Master! So,
great delivery.
Good times. Thanks. So yeah, now the gate and the ghouls and everything like that. So, and I'm just going to let Dresden say it because it's too perfect. But, well, I call it a ghoul, but just looking at it, I knew it was like seeing something from another age. It was like seeing the drawings of things from the last ice age, familiar animals, most of them, but they were all too large, too heavy with muscle, many of them festooned with extra tusks, spurs of horn, and lumpy armored hide. This ghoul, was of the same order, 8 feet tall if it was an inch, and its hunched shoulders were so wide that it made the thing look more like a gorilla than it did a hyena or a baboon, the way most of them did. It had serrated ridges of horn on its stark cheekbones, and its jaw was far more massive with muscle. Its forearms were even longer than a normal ghoul's, its claws heavier, longer, and backed by knobbed ridges of horn that would let the thing crush and smash as effectively as it sliced and diced. Its brow ridge was far heavier too, and its eyes so recessed as to be little more than glitters from the indirect lighting could hardly be seen. The ghoul crouched and leapt 20 feet forward with an easy grace, then landed with a roar that made my knees feel a little weak. Beside me, Ramirez swallowed. I am going to die a virgin. Vito let out a wild cackle of glee and howled, "At last!" He actually capered a little dance step in place. "At last, the masquerade ends. Kill them all."
The only line that I can think of that would have been better from Ramirez there would be like, "I should have taken Lara up on her offer."
Right. It's not too late, as they're about to find out, but instead we're going to fight to live. So I dropped all the power in my shield and all that I had put into the blasting rod too. Neither of them would get me out of the hellish Cuisinart of pain and death that this cavern was about to become. Right then, this would be the trap. So yeah. Just some highlights and everything. Ramirez laments the trap and tells Harry to run because, he's got a gimpy leg, so at least Harry might be able to make it. But Harry does turn around and opens his own gate. Thomas comes through while Ramirez fights the ghouls. Thomas finishes off the ghoul that Ramirez is fighting with his shotgun. This time does slow down. Dresden takes stock. I think he describes it as like one of those moments where your brain starts to process things faster and you're able to like see everything in excruciating detail and all of that stuff. So mostly the ghouls are on the Malvoran and Skavis side, but are killing indiscriminately. Lady Malvora kills one, but 4 others basically land on her and just rip her apart, which, that'll be a fun scene. A vampire trying to flee tripped over a human thrall, a girl no more than 18, and dealt her a blow with his fist in pure frustration, snapping her neck. He was brought down by ghouls a breath later. Elsewhere, other vampires seemed to have lost control of their demonic hunger completely, and they had thrown down whatever thralls they could seize with no regard for gender or for their particular favorite food might be. It's kind of an odd thing that Harry would be narrating here, but whatever. One thrall writhing under a scavus was screaming and pushing her thumbs into her own eyes, which is a favorite. Another shuddered under the fear compulsion of a Malvora, clearly in the midst of a seizure or heart attack, right up until a tide of ghouls overran predator and prey alike. The wraith didn't seem to be as wholly frenzied as the other houses, or maybe they'd just eaten more today. I saw only a couple of thralls down by them being torn out of their clothes and ravaged on the stone. Be like, imagine the memo that goes out to the Wraith email that day and just be like, everybody should be sure to eat today. Your life may depend on it. And they're like, fuck you, old man. What do you know? And then those those ones get eaten by ghouls. Be like, don't listen. Okay.
Yeah, I bet Lara has a bit more of a control over the Wraith contingent of just like whatever mental powers that she has, as we see again with Papa Wraith now, just making sure that they are not as frenzied is a significant aspect of. They get to run faster than the others, and the ghouls are the bear that they're running away from.
That's fair, metaphor. Right? I don't have to be faster than the ghouls, just faster than the Malvora and Scavus.
Yeah, and she wants them taken off the field anyway because they're annoying.
Right.
What, are you saying she planned this some way?
Well, the stroke of luck here is that Vito was also on that side of the contingent, so the ghouls are mostly focused over there too, because he just wanted to see everybody get wiped out, or at least Cal did, one or the other. And so it doesn't matter to him that his family is getting taken out. Everybody's supposed to die, right? Which is like, holy crap, could you imagine, that blow, right? You basically have the lords and ladies of the three top houses in here. God, imagine there are some other houses, but this is like chop the head off the snake level, right? Like probably not everybody is here, but enough of them, and especially the powerful ones are, that it's like you would have just like crippled White Court vampires, and it's certainly at least their nation, if nothing else. So just kind of wild. But so like those near Lord Scavus, a core of organization had formed around Lara and her father. Someone, I saw a flash of Justine's terrified face, was holding a little air horn up and triggering it wildly. I spotted Vito Malvora charging the ghouls around his fallen aunt and watched as he threw himself on the remains with an inhuman howl and began feasting beside the creatures who had killed her, which, is a sane thing to do. Mm-hmm. For a second, I thought I saw a dark shape in that gate. The suggestion, so he's looking at the gate that Vito opened and whatever, or had opened. The suggestion of an outlined hood and cloak, it might have been Cal. I'd have hit him with all the fire I could call if I'd had a second to spare, but I didn't. I brought up my shield as the ghouls came over the floor and held it fast as the leader of the pack slammed into it in a flare of blue and silver light and a cloud of sparks. The ghoul only howled and began slamming the barrier with his fists. Every single one hit with the energy of a low-speed car crash, and even with my nifty new bracelet, I could feel a surge of power I needed to keep the shield steady with when each of the blows came thundering down. What happened to the ghoul as its speed carried its whole mass all the way through the shield does not bear thinking on, but Ramirez was going to need new clothes. So Ramirez basically stops one with his shield. So, and then we've got the one ghoul that's still pounding on Dresden's shield. Bam, bam, bam. Murphy screamed, Harry, Thomas, Ramirez, down. I dropped and dragged Carlos down with me, lowering my shield as I went. Thomas hit the ground a fraction of a second after I did, and the world came apart in thunder. Sound hammered at my head and ears, and I found myself screaming in pain and shock before I ground my teeth and shot a quick glance behind me, trying not to lift my head any higher than I had to. Murphy knelt on the ground by my feet in her dark fatigues, body armor, black baseball cap, and amber safety glasses. She had a weird little rectangular gun about the size of a big box of chocolates held on one shoulder. It had a tiny little barrel and one of the little red dot optical sights, and Murphy's cheek was laid on it, one eye aligned with the sight as she poured automatic fire into the oncoming ghouls in neat, chattering bursts that ripped the ghoul that had been pounding on my shield into a spray of broken bits. It went over backward, thrashing one arm and howling in agony. Beside Murphy, playing Clifford the big red dog to her Emily Elizabeth, was Hendrix. The huge red-headed enforcer was also kneeling and firing, but the gun he held to his shoulder was approximately the size of an intercontinental ballistic missile and spat out a stream of tracer rounds that ripped into the attacking creatures with a vengeance. Several men I recognized from Marcone's organization were lined up next to him, all firing. So were several more men I didn't recognize, but whose clothing and equipment were sufficiently different to make me think they were freelancers hired for the job. A few more were still pouring through the open gate and into the cavern. And just like, I want a scene of them just like laying down fire, just like completely fucking devastating these ghouls and everything. So yeah, Dresden and Marcone decide to square off with each other because Dresden's like, we got to get the Wraiths out of here. Otherwise this, it's not as good, right? It's better if we can save them too. Dresden gets in Marcone's face. Hendrix goes to object, but Murphy puts him down in a wrist lock. That's what I call it anyway. She grabs two of his fingers and like starts playing around with them a little bit. Dresden begs Marcone to help him save people, which kind of like rocks Marcone back on his feet and everything like that. And then, Marcone agrees, because he's like, please, God, help me save them. And so he's like, okay, but I'm going to need my people back. Murph, can't you pick on someone your own size? So
good line.
Yeah. So Marcone agrees. They all head out, including Marcone and Hendrix. Dresden tries to argue, but it's like, you don't have time to argue, and I'm going with you. So, and then Dresden turns to Marcone and is like, as a matter of fact, I don't need this cave, and you don't either. Marcone gets the hint. So, and then Marcone shoots a ghoul that is
favorite way of solving problems. Blow it up.
Explosives.
Set it on fire. Magically, or, just load like tech. Like, it doesn't matter. Just blow it up.
Right. And I mean, they came prepared. They have like actual like watches, not electronic timers, right? So it would survive whatever magic's being thrown around. Do what?
Are these the Einherjar that he has with him right now, or are these just
most likely?
Okay,
they don't identified, but I think he does say like the Monarch mercenaries at some point, and I think it's like another book or two where they get confirmed to be, so, or maybe it's not even until like Ghost Story or something like that, right, where he starts throwing around the word all the time, but like, yeah, he does at some point. I think they do get confirmed, and he's like, wait a minute, I recognize you from the deeps or something like that, but I don't think the word's used in this book. So
but for casting calls, it's like, all right, be large and Scandinavian.
Yeah, we need a bunch of people that look like they belong in the set of Die Hard, so something like that.
Hey, the bad guys were very multicultural in Die Hard.
You got it, boss. There was, your token not, hunk of meat guy who was the boss, and then you had your token black guy who was the hacker, and stuff like that. So, which I mean, he's one of my favorite. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, very 80s. He was your Japanese cultured goon. So, but yeah. So Marcone ends up shooting one of the ghouls that is in the middle of reanimating because Dresden realizes that the Icarus blood is moving. Great. So.
Oh shit, dude! I'm reconstituted, but I think I got your liver here. Can we trade?
Right. Yep. So Dresden uses his magic to make a hole, and then Hendrix and Thomas widen it. Which that's got to be a fun scene, right? Of like Dresden has some thought of like, I was pretty sure he had played football. Now I know he did, because Hendrix just like ducks into a tackle and just like knocks ghouls over and shit like that, and Thomas is just dancing around doing his Legolas impression and everything. And then once they clear a line, they're met by a line of savage goddesses because the Wraith daughters are all there. So Laura swayed a step toward me, all the motion in her thighs and hips, her eyes brilliant and steady, focused on me, and I felt a sudden urge to kneel that vibrated in my brain and elsewhere. I mean, how bad could that be? Just think of the view from down there, and it had been a long time since a woman had Dresden, get it together. So Dresden ends up parlaying a truce with the Wraiths, but they've got to bring all the thralls, which Lara is like, are you for real right now? But then this is where we straight up see her give orders to Dad telepathically. So Lord Wraith steps up and says, we don't have time to argue with this bullshit. Bring them. But then they kind of arrange it where it's like the daughters are on the outside and then the thralls are a human shield around Lord Wraith, which is kind of interesting.
That's a compromise. I think I remember like when Lara's eyes go silver and then Lord Wraith says like something really like dumb and precocious of like, this alliance will be very good for our people, and like we're about to go into a politician spiel, and they just like, shut the fuck up and go.
Yeah. And Dresden's like, very nice, we don't have time for this, yeah. So this is when they're heading back to the gate, and this is where the lights go out. And so I think this is where Dresden's like, so all the fire that I've unleashed and the duel and the gates and all of this other shit, and now the lights go out, and everything like that.
And so like, they were fairies and they just zapped away versus
maybe
breaking. I don't know, it's not important.
But I mean, define zapped away, because like they do show up again later, so it's not like they get obliterated or whatever. But like for me, I'm thinking it's like, I mean, it could be fiber optic, right? And the lights could just be like way out there, and then Cowl has just got to do a dedicated working to drop them at that point, So, but it's somewhat academic, So, but what's important
really
here,
into the weeds? Never.
Yeah, never. Yeah. What's fun about this though, too, is that this is one of those things where Dresden puts things together that you see again later, which I hadn't necessarily caught myself, which is Dresden immediately calls light, right? And because it's like a wizard does what a wizard always does in the dark, and he calls light, and then immediately realizes why that was a bad idea. Right. And this comes back again in Turncoat, because when they hex out the lights and set the the Mordite fiend loose, right? And the lights go out, and then wizards do 200 times what wizards always do. It's one of the first things they learn, probably, is how to call up just a little bit of light so that they can work it in the dark and everything like that, which is not a double entendre, but it works. So yeah, Dresden makes his staff a Hellfire torch, which I think is kind of neat. Just the idea of it just being like a torch, with the lit runes and everything like that. But all the ghouls are like, hey, wait a minute, he's over there.
The target's right there.
Like, to be fair, they probably could see in the dark. I wouldn't put that past them. It's a pretty common monster ability, right? But they very much know where the light is now, and that's their target, so. But yeah, then we get Flammamorous, which is Dresden's firewall spell of literally like molten rock and shit like that, that he uses to kind of like shield them from the ghouls for a little bit of time. So, and then, so there's still a lot of back and forth. There's still all the soldiers are shooting and everything like that. A ghoul basically ragdolls Hendrix with two more chasing right on his heels, heading straight for Dresden. Dresden bounces the ghoul off of his shield bracelet, but only had enough juice for that and then collapses. Thomas jumps in, cuts down the two stragglers, but isn't fast enough to stop the first ghoul. But that's why Dresden carries a gun. So when he's out of spell slots. So Dresden uses his 44. Let's see. The truth is that my nerves were pretty shot and I was too tired to panic. I barely got the sights lined up before the ghoul's jaws opened wide enough to engulf my entire head. But I'm just thinking like, video game sight of like just the camera sighted down the gun and just shoot the ghoul right in the mouth or something like that. So kaboom. A blast of green light flashed down the line, went completely through two ghouls, leaving them howling on the floor, severed a third ghoul's arm at the shoulder, and continued on through the white throne, leaving a hole the size of a laundry basket in its back. Ramirez had been waiting for them to line up like that. He stood, his weight on one foot, at the far end of the lowering wall of flaming stone on the ghoul's side, arms akimbo. They whirled toward him, but Ramirez started lifting his arms alternatingly from his hip to extend before him, the motion like that of a gunfighter of the Old West, and every draw flung more silent green shafts of deadly light through the ghouls. Those nearest him tried to rush forward for the kill, but Ramirez had their measure now, and he wasn't content to leave a single gaping hole, trusting that it would incapacitate them sufficiently. He hurled blast after hideously ruinous blast and left nothing but scattered pile of twitching parts of the first schools to rush him, and those beyond them suffered nearly as greatly. Fresh spilled black ichor rushed back and forth across the cavern floor until it looked like the deck of a ship pitching on a lunatic sea. What are you waiting for, Dresden? One little bit of volcanomancy and you get worn out. A particularly well-aimed bolt tore the heads from a pair of ghouls at once. How do you like that? It hurts, bellowed Ramirez drunkenly, flinging a last pair of bolts at a fleeing ghoul. Oh, it hurts. It hurts to be this good. So there was a hiss, a sound, a flicker of steel, and one of Vito Malvora's knives hit Ramirez in the stomach so hard that it threw the young man off his feet into the ground. Harry gets over to him and, picks him up and everything. Bloody hell, he gasped. Harry, there's a knife in my leg. When did that happen? In the duel, don't you remember? I thought you stepped on me and sprained my ankle, Ramirez replied. Then he blinked again. Bloody hell, there's a knife in my guts. And they match.
Yeah, he's definitely out of it.
Oh, yeah, that's shock. So, so vampires are fleeing past Dresden through the gate, and Thomas and his sister stood alone against the horde of 8-foot ghouls, stood against it and stopped it cold. Their skin gleamed colder and whiter than glacial ice. Their eyes blazed silvery bright, and they moved with blinding speed and utterly inhuman grace. His saber fluttered and slashed, drawing a constant stream of blood, punctuated by devastating blows of his kukri.
Are these kimonos that Lara and sisters are wearing the same Doctor Strange ripoffs that they were wearing in Battleground, do you think?
Possibly. Why?
They probably should be, right? Because they're not wearing much, but it's protected something magical armament.
Maybe they are, but I think importantly is kimonos can be quite restrictive, right? At least the traditional female ones are, right?
It really
part of
depends
the idea being
on how far we're going with kimono here.
Yeah,
but...
no, I know, that's what I'm saying. So Dresden calls them a kimono as a shorthand, but they're probably just full-length robes, right? Silk full-length robes, because I doubt that the wraiths are letting them bind up their legs or anything like that. So
right.
I very much just imagine, maybe the same style of robe, but with a belt in the middle, and it's just one flap over the other and belted. And you've got all the range of motion and access to the bits, because that's another thing that the wraiths would be concerned about, so yeah, but it doesn't preclude them from being ensorcelled in some way, that
maybe it's the mildest of retconning to add them to be ensorcelled in a way that makes sense for if Lara was expecting a fight and they're wearing it and she's holding the line along with Thomas against these kinds of ghouls, maybe we should see her having the kind
take
of
a hit.
Yeah, and the ensorcelment take action.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, honestly, there's not a lot that I love in the Batman versus Superman movie, but absolutely one of my favorite scenes in that whole thing is when Batman kind of starts dueling with the thugs and gets shotgunned in the back of the head, because that gives you everything that you needed to see in that place, where it was just Batman's not supernatural, he's just a dude, but also he's wearing fucking armor, right? And he's not going to have a good time from something like that, but he basically gets shotgunned. And so it's I would totally love to see a ghoul try to plunge its clawed hands through her chest and basically see him buckle or just bounce off or something like that before, she or Thomas chop its fucking head off. Like I'm down for that. Like I love that scene. So, but I know, a little weird, but I like what I like.
I've not seen that movie.
Jesus Christ, woman, would you watch a movie?
Would I have seen that?
Because it's not Marvel. I know you hate Marvel. I didn't know you hated DC.
It's not like I enjoy Superman much. It's just like
I'll find you the scene. You can watch it in a GIF or something like that. So,
okay.
Whatever. But yeah. All right. So, Marcone, important scene, walks up next to Dresden. My God, Marcone said, his voice hushed. It's the most beautiful nightmare I've ever seen. So
because Marcone's intelligent.
Well, and he's got a moment to breathe, but just a moment, because now it's time for. Go ahead.
These are the two men that turned Lara down inside the same century. They are both looking at her like that's great and terrifying, not going near it. Both of them, like inside the same book, they both turned her down too.
Is it?
I think so, because this is when he's becoming the Baron of Chicago, and she's signing the things, and I'm pretty sure that's when
made a pitch.
Oh
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because I was trying to remember who the three signers were until the end, because I was like, I remember Monarch, obviously, Dresden, obviously. Like, was Mab the other one? No, Lara, which is really close, but
on behalf of her father, because he's indisposed.
Correct, obviously. I mean, she's an officer of the court, so that's still authority. So, yeah. So now it's time for Vittorio's savage outsider-fueled attack, right? Which, Dresden won't realize it's an outsider until Lashiel explains it to him because he's dumb. And we'll have time to talk about your mother later and Starborn, and like we gotta have some shot or something of her like right down in his face with the whole like, I don't have much time, but the thing about being a Starborn is, and then just not explain anything about being a Starborn, so. So yeah, Lashiel speeds up his brain to make him an offer he can't refuse. And then it's like, I mean, do we want to include Harry's thoughts, or is it more dramatic to just have Lash pleading, and Harry's few audible no's, That was one thing, because it's like they're having a mental conversation. You think the second one?
I think him like glaring at her, but not being able to say anything is better than him having words.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, because I mean the conversation is there in the book, right? But it's mental. And so it's like, do we want to come up with some gimmick to have a mental conversation, or just have the nose, in more or less real time or whatever? So yeah. Then this is the scene for the meme. Lashiel appeared in front of me for the first time on her hands and knees. She looked odd, too thin, her eyes too sunken. She had always looked strong, healthy, confident. Now her hair was a wreck, her face twisted with pain, and she was crying. She looked blotchy, and she needed a tissue. Her hands touched either side of my face. So then she tells Harry all about the outsiders and Starborn, and then she moves to shrug off some of the psychic attack. So, she's like, well, but that could hurt you or paralyze you or leave you brain damaged or whatever. It's like, yeah, or my friends could all die. And then she's like, yeah, this is going to happen, isn't it? So then she basically shrugs off most of the attack. Vittorio kicks Laura while she's down. That finally drives Harry to act, because she's a vampire and a scary monster and everything, but you kick in a woman while she's down. Like, that's all the way across Harry's lines. So, but he starts turning towards Dresden. Burns hurt Dresden. Have I mentioned how much I hate being exposed to fire? No sense in wasting perfectly good irony. I waited until he said fire to spin and pull the trigger on Marcone's shotgun. The weapon bucked hard. I hadn't had time to brace it properly and slammed into my shoulder with bruising force only partly attenuated by my duster. The blast pretty well removed Vittorio's right hand in the middle of his forearm. The way I hear it, amputation is bad for your concentration. It certainly wasn't good for Vittorio's, and you can't hold up the pressure on a spell like he'd been using without concentration. There was a sudden surge of particularly intense discomfort through the spell as Vittorio's physical trauma sent a flare of energy through it, like feedback of an enormous speaker. The ghouls howled in agonized reaction to the surge of discord, and it gave me a second or so to act. Thomas, wakey, wakey, now is not the time to lie down and die. So, and then I found out whether or not Cowl was actually there. There was a huge surge of power, an abrasive scream against my arcane senses, and the offspring of a comet and a pterodactyl came hurtling out of the darkness at the far end of the cavern. My eyes had adjusted enough to see the dim oval of reddish light that outlined a heavily cloaked figure, Cowl, standing in his own gate. "Master!" Vittorio cried, his voice slurred. "Look out!" I screamed, and thrashed behind me with my arms as I ducked and lurched to one side, trying to sweep Lara out of the flying thing's path as I did. It missed us by inches, but we got out of the way. Cow's leathery, rasping voice hissed something in a slithering tongue, and a second surge of power lashed invisibly across the cavern, not at us, but at my gate. As quickly as that, my gate began to close, the opening sewing itself shut like a Ziploc bag, starting with the end closest to me. Dresden, called Marcone's voice from the closing gate. 19! I hurled through the air, looking wildly around, showed me that Laura had seized me and leapt for the far end of the collapsing gate. 18! Came Marcone's shout. Laura and I flew through the empty and unremarkable air. The gate had closed. We missed it. Bummer. So now we get the TikToks, right? So, yeah. So Laura gets herself and Dresden to the mouth of the tunnel because he's like, well, there's only one way out, so you got to get us there. But the ghouls got any other options, So Laura flies them over to, to the tunnel. What now? Laura demanded. The ghouls were coming. They were nowhere near as fast as Laura had been, but they weren't far away. I took a deep breath. Now, kiss me. I know it seems weird.
Don't need to tell her twice.
Yeah. Laura let out a single ravenous snarl and was abruptly pressed up against me, arms sliding around my waist with sinuous serpentine power. Her mouth met mine and, oh my God. Laura had once boasted that she could do more to me in an hour than a mortal woman could in a week, but it ain't boasting if it's true. The first searing second of that kiss was indescribably intense. I guess, whatever, we could skip all this. Is this a kissing book or what? So, but anyway, the point is, she's recharging his batteries in more way than one. And because I'm a nerd and because it's funny, we got to work Earth Angel into this somehow. You've seen, Back to the Future, presumably, right?
Very long time ago.
Yeah. When he's playing Earth Angel and then finally his parents kiss and that brings him back from oblivion because he almost got winked out of existence. And then, Earth Angel fades all the way down and then just goes Earth Angel. And then he gets launched out of the fucking deeps. Anyway, go watch a movie, Lana. Seriously.
I've seen movies. I've seen that one. It was probably more than 20 years ago.
Unacceptable.
And the movie was old then. Like, come on.
Yes.
And Ben would say it is cutting edge and fairly new.
Yeah. It is so old that its sequel that takes place in the distant year, 2015
or something.
Yeah. We're way past that now, too. Yes. So, yeah. All right. So Dresden and Lara get launched like a cannonball out of the deeps, still kissing. They crash into the Wraith estate and start some small fires. Lara gets burned by Dresden's love for Susan. And she's like, after all this time, our intelligence said that, Miss Ramirez has not left the, South America in 4 years. It's probably about right. Still, a man like you, and it's been 4 years. She shook her head. I have enormous personal respect for you, wizard, but that's just sad. I grunted again, too tired to lip off. Saved my life just now, I suppose. Lara looked back at me for a moment, then she turned pink. Yes, it probably did, and I owe you an apology for trying to eat me. Yeah.
She has a sense of self-control. She thought she was dying,
Well,
and so she just, like, indulged and wasn't going to do self-control because might as well go out with a bang. Ha ha. And,
right.
yeah,
I mean, of
she
things
wasn't
that
going
need
to
to get
stop.
explained, like why. Okay, never mind. I could probably work it out. I was like, why didn't she get burned from the kiss from before now? And it's like because she wasn't trying to feed yet, probably, right?
No,
So
she probably was, but she states that the protection is old, so it, like, lagged to kick in, and of it all this happens with, like, 3
mm,
seconds.
yeah, okay, fine. But it just
Because
seems like
when
she should have got burned immediately because like when the thing happens at 0 later with like Justine, right? Like
yeah,
that's
but
pretty immediate.
that's pretty active. Like, they're
Yeah.
still
Okay.
actively in love and gifts of everything and all that stuff. And in Peace Talks, when she gets burned by just brushing up against Dresden, it was immediate, and it wasn't even she
Right.
wasn't necessarily trying to feed. It was just an accidental touch because it was so quick and new after professing love to Murphy and all that. So, but this is old. He's no longer
Gotcha.
in love with Susan. He's just still protected by her.
Okay. Um yeah, so Dresden, her talking, you gave me your word of safe passage, Laura. I think she says like, "What would stop me from killing you right now?" or whatever. You know, it's like you gave me your word of safe passage. Laura threw back her head in a rich laugh. So I did. She faced me more directly, set the sword aside, and rose. What do you want? I want those people returned to life. I spat at her. I want to undo all that pain that's been inflicted during this mess. I want children to get their mothers back, parents to get their daughters, husbands their wives. I want you and your kind never to hurt anyone ever again. Right in front of my eyes, she turned from a woman into a statue, cold and perfectly still. What do you want that I might give you? First, reparations, a weregild to the victims' families, I said. I'll provide you with the details for each. Done. Second, this never happens again. One of yours starts up with genocide again, and I'm going to reply in kind, starting with you. I'll have your word on it. Her eyes narrowed further. Done, she murmured. The little folk, I said, they shouldn't be in cages. Free them, unharmed, in my name. She considered that for a moment and then nodded. Anything else? Some Listerine. I've got a funny taste in my mouth. That
Cool it on
last
the
remark,
bubblegum lip gloss.
right? That last remark drew more anger out of her than anything else that had happened the entire night. Her silver eyes blazed with rage, and I could feel the fury roiling around her. Our business is concluded. Get out of my house.
And now he has to marry her.
She says
I
another
know.
thing
What a bitch.
in this you are the greatest weapon I have ever wielded. And
Hmm.
that is the
Yeah.
biggest insult she can say to him. And so that's an important thing to say there.
Isn't this also where she's like, "I'll kill
It's-
you with kindness"?
Yes. Yeah. That's a good
He's-
monologue.
He's
Mm.
trying to leave out the hole. I've got that here. So I stopped at the hole in the wall and said, I'm glad to have preserved the peace effort. I said, forcing the words out. I think it's going to save lives, Lara, your people's and mine, your people lives and mine. I've got to have you where you are to get that. I looked at her. Otherwise, I'd settle up with you right now. Don't get to thinking we're friends. She faced me, her face all shadowed, the light of slowly growing fires lighting her from behind. I'm glad to see that you survived, wizard. You who destroyed my father and secured my own power. You who have now destroyed my enemies. You are the most marvelous weapon I have ever wielded. She tilted her head at me, and I love peace, wizard. I love talking, laughing, relaxing. Her voice dropped to a husky pitch. I will kill your folk with peace, wizard. I will strangle them with it, and they will thank me while I do.
Mhm.
She's scary,
Yeah.
smoking hot and scary.
This is like this monologue here. I can't help but think like, if are we gonna come back to this? Is Laura gonna end up? Because she seems to be moving more and more towards ally and friend than enemy. But is it gonna be a reverse at some point? Because that's kind of what she said she'll do. We'll be friends. I'll be kind, and then I'll slowly kill you and everybody. You know.
Yeah. She's posturing.
Well, in moments, right? There are moments like she also sends a fucking, carrier to go get Dresden out of Chichen Itza, and she had next to nothing to do with that, right? So like
Thomas presented a very compelling argument why she was in danger.
like she does what the fuck Thomas tells her to do. Give me a break. So
The bloodline curse could have done it. Potentially, we don't know.
It wouldn't affected her though, right?
It would, because it would go to like the way that it would have affected Thomas would also have like carried on, I think, through the branching things.
Yeah.
And when you're doing it to a human family, you're only going to affect 4 or 5 people. But when you do it to the Red Court, you destroy generations of it. And it could have potentially at least destroyed the human side of the White Court vampires. And because they are 2 creatures in one body, and that's how they are the phage, it would have killed them.
Maybe. I think maybe she thought that, or at least there was enough plausible deniability that she's like, we don't have time to argue with this, fucking stop it, or something.
I mean, I always took it. I took it as like she wants to help Thomas at the end of the day, his family, and she wants to help him when she can. But
yes,
she needs an excuse to do so.
Yeah, I mean, there's still other rules and stuff like that, and she still would kill him, like if she needed to, and that sort of thing. I personally, like, I know I'm, deluding myself, and this is going to hurt at some point finally, but the pieces are always there that she's liked Dresden since at least blood rights, right? So, and I think that's just kind of like gets back to it, and like she's big mad right now, but like she's not going to stay mad, right? Like this isn't one of those things where it's like, oh yes, that's where she started hating Dresden. She doesn't hate Dresden, and she's still not going to, like, not in my mind anyway. So
moving a carrier in position to help with Chichen Itza, that's because Thomas told her to freak out.
Maybe. Yeah. Well, of course, remember this conversation in 4 months when we get to that point, and read it again. But yeah. So Dresden wakes up in his bed, all sore and stuff, but less sore because, or maybe he's got the right stuff for it, but it's like Molly had Tiger Balm and a bunch of other stuff that she was able to start, taking care of some of his bruises and everything like that. So Dresden's like, well, I'm doubling your pay. You don't pay me triple then. So yeah. Skipping ahead some conversation, I think he's explaining everything to Molly and what happened, and explaining that Thomas can cross them in and out of the Never Never because he did that in grave peril. What kind of places that are important to them, relevant to them in a particular way? Places of lust, you mean? I coughed and ate more cereal. Yeah. And places where significant things have happened to them. In Thomas's case, he was nearly sacrificed by a cult of porn star sorceresses in those caves a few years. I'm sorry, but it sounded like you said cult of porn star sorceresses. Yeah. Oh, sorry, then keep going. So like, that's the weirdest thing that's happened to Harry and Thomas, so. But there's also a scene with, the small folks streaming by Harry's apartment as the guard grows, because he had it done in his name. He knew what he was doing, or he should be,
He should have.
So
he should have understood he's creating a tiny army of people, but no, he didn't.
Yeah, right. So then Dresden inquires about the P90 and everything like that, and sees that it's engraved with we'll always have Hawaii. What does that mean? So as she turns pink. So interestingly, while Murphy and Dresden are debriefing, they seem to be unclear on if they actually got the person that blew up her car, which I find an unnecessary wrinkle. Is that like, well, we still don't know who blew up my car. And Dresden's like, well, it probably was one of them. And she's like, well, but probably not. And it's like, well, let's just assume that it is, because like that's too complicated to think something else. But it's like the spider hole got blown up by an incendiary device that presumably was going to match the one used in her car. And so either we assume that it was Malvora, because that makes the most sense, and they already said that earlier in the book, Or now we've got a second and or third person, because we also have the swipe taken at him earlier in the book, right? That was like the attack of opportunity of driving him off the road, that we, at least in our headcanon, I assume at least that
That was
was
proven
future
guilty.
Dresden.
That's not
Was
White
it
Knight.
proven guilty?
Yep,
Okay.
that's proven guilty, not White Knight.
So-
and so that's not this book.
So Dresden also firebombs her car. Like, give me a break, you know. So
Well, the trend of firebombing her car has stopped. It would be funny if Dresden does have to firebomb the car because he's like, but this happened and they're not doing it, and just another place where he has
he's
to.
like, oh right, the
put
little ball of
himself.
sunshine, and then he like gas tanks her car and just you
Yeah.
know. So yeah, I don't know. It was important to call out, but it's an unnecessary wrinkle in my opinion, and we'll see if it ever gets picked up, you know. So
Yeah, if it's ever picked up, that's good. But she doesn't lose consecutive cars to firebombing,
right.
and that's not even anything that happens in the next book either. So we're
Right.
good there. It's just she felt that they were missing a piece of conclusive evidence. She's
Mhm.
a cop.
Yeah, fair. Yeah. So now we get the whole thing about, you know, Dresden's got to go drop off some papers and everything like that, because he bribed Marcone and gave him what he wanted to make him a freeholding lord, you know, Baron
Mhm.
Marcone. So Murphy's asking about it. I had Bob look into it, maybe 20 on the whole planet. 2 dragons, Dracul, the original, not Baby Vlad, the archive, the CEO of Monarch Securities, and some kind of semi-immortal shape-shifting guru in the Ukraine. So people like that. The Accords let them sign on as individuals. They have the same rights and obligations. Most people who consider the idea aren't willing to agree to be a good traditional host for, let's say, a group of Black Court vampires, and don't want to get caught up as a mediator in a dispute between the major powers. They don't want to make themselves the targets of possible challenges either, so not many of them even try it. I rubbed my jaw, and no one who is just a vanilla human being has ever tried it. Marcone is breaking new ground. So, as we discussed earlier, Dresden's one of the 3 sponsors. Monarch was another, and then Lara. So, then, you know, Dresden checks in on Elaine. They start talking about laying the groundwork for the Paranet with the Weregild. Which I forgot, you know, that would give them potentially some sizable financial backing, right? So forgot there was actual like money involved in that. So
Point of order that I'm not sure it can even be answered. Can anyone who's a member of the White Court be a signatory? Does it require certain rank within the Wardens? He's a regional commander. Does like Monarch Securities? I guess it's probably Vadarung himself who did that. Lara is de facto leader or next leader of the White Court. So just can anyone do it who is a signatory like that are in affection? That's so could Thomas have done it when
Dresden
he was
answers this question. So do you want the Dresden answer, or are you just going to speculate for 5 minutes? Which answer do you want?
I want the answer in the book that I apparently can't remember.
Yeah. Dresden is a regional commander that gives him authority to sign on behalf of the council.
Okay.
Because he, like, I think Murphy asks, or somebody asks, like, do you have the authority to do that? And he's like, well, if they didn't like it, they shouldn't have made me a regional commander. So that's the answer.
Yeah.
Thomas presumably couldn't. Maybe he could because he's like a direct heir or whatever. But it seems like, I mean, you got to be like the leader or an officer, right? Pretty typical corporate stuff. So Dresden's
C-suite,
an officer
C-suite of some sort.
Yeah.
And the regional commander is a C-suite.
Well, but he isn't, right? You know, that's what's interesting. Maybe he's a VP of some kind, you know, or something comparatively, because it's like, why would you not just restrict it to the senior council?
Yeah. I guess the senior council's the C-suite.
Right. So
he's very likely pushing a boundary that he shouldn't.
Perhaps. Yeah. Dresden push them into something. Yeah. Right. I mean, just imagine somebody on the White Council decides to push the issue and threaten Marcone, and Mab shows up, and I'm like, I'm sorry, are you threatening my favorite pet? Like,
Yeah. Are you
Would you even
saying
fucking
work
try?
is done improperly?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, certainly there's probably room now because Dresden's no longer on the council and there's a conflict of interest of being her knight, that there could be some argument there. But I think, yeah, I could easily see like Listens to Win being like, really? You really want to challenge this and have Mab come lawyering up? You know,
But at
like,
the same time,
so.
currently, it's not revealed yet, but currently they're under the whammy from Peabody. And so their signatures
True.
are suspect anyway. They don't want to think about
Yeah.
that.
Maybe. Yeah. So yeah, some more housekeeping and then we'll be done. But Dresden checks in on Ramirez. Ramirez calls him out on his shady contacts and lack of trust for Ramirez. Ramirez also has figured on a leak and, that there's a Black Council. He calls them the Black Hats, but Dresden's like, I call them the Black Council. Yeah, yours is better, so. And then he says that the Black Council seems to be against Team Reality. That's my words, but the Black Council seems to just want destruction. They seem to be trying to tear everything down, which is not entirely the take that I've had, but reading that and kind of revisiting with White Knight, like obviously destroying the White Court, like it wasn't like they tried to supplant Skavis, right, and make Skavis the head of the house. That's what Skavis wanted to have happen. That was not Cowell's plan, clearly. But it's kind of interesting, and I still consider it a very huge pivot from, I guess we just need to accept the fact that Cal just freaking lied to Dresden the entirety of, Deadbeat, because Cal's like, oh no, I just want to destroy the power and I would never take the power, and his plan the entire time was apparently to take the power and destroy fucking everything with it, so it's just, I have a tough time always reconciling the Cal that we talk to in Deadbeat to the lunatic that is just trying to destroy everything that we see when he's mostly off screen. So
the overarching thing, at least with White Knight, is the way that it destabilizes the rest of the world. Like picking off the members of what will be the Paranet makes them less capable of protecting themselves against problems, which include outsiders. The
more
it's the White Court also wants things to be stable because that's where they thrive, like Lara says. Like she can thrive in kindness and in peace because they are creatures of society and culture and cities and things like that. And so the worse that is, the less that the White Court can function. And, when all of these things are going to line up on Team Reality, they are all the outsiders' enemies.
Sure. Yeah.
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 So
and it's
the war of attrition
reconciling
is what he's doing here.
Yeah, right. And it very much was like, that's what the swipe at the Paranet type of people was, is it was a logistical problem for the White Council that they didn't even know that they had and weren't protecting against. Not truly, like it was in their purview, but it wasn't like they had just wardens patrolling these places to be like, let's make sure you're not being eaten by predators. That was something they weren't doing, so but continuing the conversation with Ramirez, so it's like, was that so hard, Dresden, to talk to me? I settled back in my chair. My shoulders suddenly felt loose and wobbly. I breathed in and out a few times, then said, no, idiot. So, think I should come clean to the Merlin? Are you kidding? He hates your guts. He'd have you declared a traitor, locked up, and executed before you got through the first paragraph. But I'm with you all the way, except for all those other things that happen. So,
yeah.
So yeah, then Dresden goes to see Marcone and drop off the paperwork and everything, and he interrupts Marcone and Demeter. So,
right. Yeah. And this is so does she know that her child is in a coma because she thinks her child is dead?
Right. Dresden, Marcone said, his tone pleasant. Helen made no move to stir from where she was. It's nice to see you alive. Your sense of humor, of course, remains unchanged, which is unsurprising, as it seems to have died in your adolescence. Presumably it entered a suicide pact with your manners. So. And then another good one. You should see how much my insurance premiums go up after your visits, Dresden. And they call me an extortionist. Helen, could you send Bonnie in here with that file? So I walked over to the desk, took the entire stack, and started reading it from page 1. You never sign a contract you haven't read, even if you aren't a wizard. If you are one, it's even more important than that. People joke about signing away their soul of their firstborn. In my world, it's possible. So Marcone seems to understand and just waits patiently. Then he goes back to his apartment, talks to Bob. They discuss how Lashiel's sigil is just freaking gone now. So,
and also he has
then,
like brain damage and it's like glowing.
But only in the parts where she lived, so. And people get all touchy about brain damage and their soul being missing and stuff like that. So, yeah. Right. She said it could cause me brain damage. I think it did. Huh? See what I mean? You're thicker already. Harry get hammer, smash stupid talkie skull, which is another one of my favorites. But yeah. So then he explains the soul thing and why he gets his protection, because it's like you shared a bunch of your soul with Susan and she with you, and that's what protected you from Laura. You and Murphy swapped some pretty recently. Looks like you must have gotten a hug or something. Honestly, Harry, you really ought to bang her and get it over with. I reached under the work table and drew out the claw hammer and gave Bob a pointed look. Right. Back to business. Your soul. You give away pieces of yourself all the time. Everyone does. Some of it goes out with your magic too. It grows back. Relax, boss. Then they talk about free will a little bit. Maybe that's why they call it free will. Hey, tell me that at least you got a pony ride before the carnival left town. I mean, she could have made you see and feel anything at all. And Bob paused and his eyelids blinked. Hey, Harry. Are you crying? So Dresden sits down with his guitar and starts thinking out things, and that's when he realizes that he can play beautifully. So she left him a present even after saving his life and more or less killing herself in the process. So then Dresden follows Thomas to make sure that he isn't going out to eat anyone and see what he's been hiding. So Harry goes in while he's like shampooing some woman's hair, and Thomas froze. His eyes widened the size of hand mirrors. He swallowed and the bobby pins fell out of his mouth. All the women looked back and forth between us, and then there was an immediate buzz of whispers and quiet talks. You've got to be kidding me.
While shampooing hair, I think it's a little...
Yeah, whatever. I'm not Tomas. Let the man work his magic. I may have skipped a sentence or two. So, Oh, Ari. So, one of the stylists glanced back and forth between us and said, Tomas, who's your friend? So they go discuss it and everything like that. And then, very serious and finds out about all the details and everything. And Thomas realizes, like, you're going to laugh at me, aren't you? I could wait till you've turned your back if you like. So, and he says, go ahead. You've earned it. And so Harry does. And it felt good. That's the end of the book.
And that is the end of this episode of the Dresden Files podcast. You can catch us live at every Saturday almost every Saturday. It's Sunday today at 1 p.m. Eastern. You can support us at patreon.com/brokenjars or go to brokenjars.com.xyz. You can support us also by leaving a like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. That shit helps out a lot.